My mother handed me poisoned milk on the morning of my scholarship exam, destroying my future so my sister could steal my place. They celebrated my failure like a victory, thinking I was too weak to fight back. 6 months later, I engineered the perfect revenge at my sister's award ceremony, turning her moment of triumph into a screaming breakdown that exposed their crimes to the world. They thought they knew me, but betrayal has a way of revealing who you really are underneath. The lights in the grand hall shifted first, a sickly green glow that made everyone's skin look corpse pale. The audience murmured confused as thick white foam began bubbling up from beneath the stage. It spread like a disease across the polished floor, reaching toward my sister's designer heels. Lila stood frozen at the podium, clutching her scholarship award. The same scholarship that should have been mine 6 months ago. The foam kept rising, and I could see the exact moment panic flickered across her perfect face. Then came the dolls. Massive porcelain monstrosities, each one as tall as a person, rising from hidden mechanisms beneath the stage. Their ceramic faces grinned with dead, unblinking eyes. More descended from the ceiling on mechanical arms I'd spent weeks installing. They surrounded Lila in a circle of childhood nightmares made real. I knew about her phobia. I'd cataloged every fear, every weakness, every crack in her carefully constructed facade during the 6 months everyone thought I was broken. The sound hit next, the soul-scraping shriek of porcelain grinding against porcelain, amplified through directional speakers positioned exactly where her ears would be. The frequency I'd calculated to cause maximum psychological distress. The same methodical precision I'd once applied to studying for the exam she'd stolen from me. Lila didn't just scream, she shattered. The composed scholarship winner, the golden girl who'd basked in stolen glory for months, became a thrashing animal. She slipped in the spreading foam, her designer gown soaking up the grotesque milk like substance. Her screams echoed through the hall as she clawed at the stage, trying to escape the towering dolls that loomed over her with their brittle smiles. Looking back, this moment was when I truly understood the difference between justice and revenge. The cameras captured everything. Dignified guests recoiled in horror as their golden girl broke down completely. The mayor's wife covered her children's eyes. The university president stood frozen, unsure whether to help or flee. But the cameras kept rolling, broadcasting my sister's psychological destruction to thousands of viewers. The absurdity made it perfect. Who would believe this was planned? A scholarship winner having a breakdown surrounded by giant dolls in a pool of fake milk. It looked like a surreal accident, a bizarre malfunction of some misguided art installation, but every detail served my larger purpose. As Lila thrashed and sobbed, a small vial tumbled from her purse. The distinctive blue glass caught the sickly lighting perfectly. The same type of vial I'd seen in our medicine cabinet the morning she and my mother poisoned me. I'd planted it there during the chaos along with the forged diary pages that would soon surface. The audience thought they were witnessing a mental breakdown. They had no idea they were watching a confession. I stood at the back of the hall, perfectly calm among the panicking crowd. My roommate Jake grabbed my arm, shouting over the noise. "Leo, we need to help her, that's your sister." I watched Lila slip and fall again in the foam. Her face twisted with terror as the mechanical dolls adjusted their positions with hydraulic precision. Each movement calculated to maximize her psychological torture. She destroyed my future with the same cold calculation, celebrating my pain like a victory. "She's not my sister anymore," I said. Jake stared at me like I'd become someone else. Entirely. Maybe I had. Betrayal has a way of burning away everything soft, leaving only the essential core behind. What remained of me was harder, colder, infinitely more dangerous than the trusting boy who'd drunk poisoned milk 6 months ago. The security guards finally reached Lila, pulling her from the foam as she babbled incoherently about poison and betrayal. Her mascara streaked down her face in black rivers. The perfect composure she'd worn while accepting my stolen achievements had dissolved completely. I didn't know it then, but the investigators who would arrive within hours would find more than just a public meltdown. The vial I'd planted would lead them to the drug used to poison me. The coded diary entries would point to premeditation. The financial records I'd carefully exposed would show payments made to ensure my exam failure. The public breakdown wasn't just humiliation. It was the delivery mechanism for exposing their crimes. As paramedics loaded my sister onto a stretcher, still whimpering about the dolls, I felt something that might have been satisfaction if it weren't so cold. She'd tried to destroy me on the most important day of my life. Now I'd returned the favor on hers. The hall slowly emptied as maintenance crews began cleaning up the foam and dismantling the mechanical dolls. I stayed until the end, watching them erase every trace of my masterpiece. 6 months of planning, weeks of installation, countless hours of engineering precision, all for this one perfect moment of psychological destruction. My phone buzzed with calls from my mother. I watched it ring, then powered it off. She'd played her part in my destruction. Soon she'd face the consequences along with Lila. I walked out of the hall into the cool night air, leaving behind the chaos I'd orchestrated. The old Leo would have felt guilt, remorse, some flicker of family loyalty. But that boy had died on a bathroom floor 6 months ago, poisoned by the people who claimed to love him. What emerged from that betrayal was something far more dangerous. Someone who understood that mercy was weakness, that forgiveness was surrender, that some people deserved exactly the destruction they tried to inflict on others. They'd taught me that family meant nothing when ambition was on the line. Now I was going to teach them what happened when you underestimated the quiet genius in the corner. The game had only just begun. My dorm room felt different when I returned that night. The live stream was still playing on my laptop, reporters already calling it the most bizarre public breakdown in the city's history. Comments flooded in by the thousands. Memes were already forming. My sister's psychological destruction had become entertainment for strangers. Jake burst through the door, still shaking from what he'd witnessed. "Leo, what the hell just happened? Your sister completely lost it. Those dolls, that foam, it was like some nightmare art installation gone wrong." I closed the laptop with deliberate calm. The satisfaction of watching Lila's perfect world crumble was still warm in my chest. 6 months of meticulous planning had executed flawlessly. Every mechanical component, every psychological trigger, every planted piece of evidence had performed exactly as designed. "She got what she deserved," I said. Jake stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Dude, she's your sister. She looked genuinely terrified. Whatever beef you have with her, that was brutal." I turned to face him fully. In the mirror behind me, I caught my reflection. The broken boy who'd trusted his family 6 months ago was gone. What remained was harder, more focused, infinitely more dangerous. Betrayal had burned away everything soft, leaving only the essential core. She stopped being my sister the day she celebrated my destruction. The words came out colder than I'd intended. Jake took a step back and I realized he was seeing the real me for the first time. The version that had emerged from poison and lies and calculated family betrayal. Looking back, I should have seen the fear in his eyes as a warning sign. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since the ceremony ended. 17 missed calls from my mother. Dozens of texts that shifted from concern to panic to desperate pleading. I scrolled through them without emotion, watching her realize that her carefully constructed world was starting to crack. The first text. "Leo, something terrible happened to Lila. Please call me." The 10th. "The police are asking questions about some evidence they found. I need to talk to you." The 17th. "I know you're angry, but we're family. Please don't let this destroy us." I deleted them all without responding. Family was supposed to protect you, not poison you for personal gain. They'd taught me that blood meant nothing when ambition was on the line. Now they'd learn what happened when you betrayed someone with nothing left to lose. Jake sat on his bed, still processing what he'd witnessed. "Leo, I've been your roommate for 2 years. I've never seen you like this. You're talking about your sister like she's some enemy." I walked to my desk and opened the bottom drawer. Inside were the documents I'd collected over the past 6 months. Bank records showing my mother's payments to ensure my exam failure. medical receipts for the drugs used to poison me, screenshots of Lila's social media posts celebrating her scholarship victory, and most damaging of all, the audio recording I'd found on Lila's old phone. Want to know what kind of sister I had? I connected the phone to my speakers and pressed play. Lila's voice filled the room, crystal clear and utterly damning. Mom's plan worked perfectly. Leo's little stomach problem cleared the path just like we hoped. The scholarship is mine now, and he'll never know we planned this from the beginning. God, you should have seen him retching on that bathroom floor. Pathetic. Jake's face went white. The recording continued, revealing months of planning, celebration of my suffering, and cold calculation that would make seasoned criminals proud. When it finally ended, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. I didn't know it then, but this recording would become the centerpiece of the criminal investigation that was already beginning. They poisoned you, Jake whispered. Your own family poisoned you. On the most important day of my life, I confirmed. While I was trusting them, loving them, believing they wanted what was best for me, they were actively destroying my future for Lila's benefit. The engineering textbooks on my desk told their own story. Sound design manuals marked with notes about psychological torture, mechanical engineering guides with sketches of hydraulic systems, theatrical effect handbooks with detailed calculations for creating controlled chaos. Jake's eyes moved from book to book, finally understanding the scope of what I'd accomplished. You planned all of this. The dolls, the foam, the psychological breakdown, you engineered her destruction. 6 months of preparation, I said. Every detail calculated for maximum impact. Every fear cataloged and weaponized. Every weakness identified and exploited. They thought they'd broken me. They had no idea they'd created something far more dangerous. My laptop chimed with a news alert. The story was already spreading beyond local media. Video clips of Lila's breakdown were going viral across social platforms. The hashtag Portalane Nightmare was trending. Within hours, millions of people would know my sister as the girl who'd lost her mind surrounded by giant dolls. But the viral humiliation was just the beginning. The evidence I'd planted during the chaos would lead investigators down a rabbit hole of family corruption that would destroy everything my mother and sister had built. The scholarship would be revoked. Criminal charges would follow. Their reputations would be incinerated in the fires of their own cruelty. Jake was still staring at the audio equipment, finally grasping that his quiet, studious roommate had orchestrated one of the most elaborate public destructions in the city's history. Leo, what have you become? I looked at him with the same cold calculation I'd applied to destroying my family. The old Leo would have felt guilt, remorse, some flicker of doubt about the path he'd chosen. But that boy had died on a bathroom floor, poisoned by the people who claimed to love him. I became exactly what they made me, I said. Someone who understands that mercy is weakness, forgiveness is surrender, and some betrayals demand perfect revenge. The game was accelerating beyond their control, and they had no idea how deep the destruction would go. The morning of my scholarship exam started like any other day. I woke up at 5:30, reviewed my notes one final time, and tried to calm the nervous energy that had been building for weeks. This test would determine everything: my future, my escape, my chance to build something meaningful with my life. My mother was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs. She smiled, that brittle smile I'd learned to associate with her attempts at maternal warmth. In her hands was a tall glass of milk, still cold from the refrigerator. For strength, my son, she said, offering it to me. You'll need your energy today. I took the glass without hesitation. Why would I question it? This was my mother, the woman who'd raised me, who'd claimed to want the best for my future. The milk tasted normal, maybe slightly bitter, but I attributed that to my nerves. Looking back, I should have recognized the satisfaction in her eyes as I drained the glass. The drive to the testing center was quiet. My mother wished me luck with what seemed like genuine emotion. I believed every word, trusted every gesture, walked into that building thinking my family was behind me. The greatest betrayal isn't the knife you see coming, It's the poison served with a smile by someone you love. 20 minutes into the exam, my world tilted sideways. The first wave of nausea hit like a sledgehammer. My vision blurred, the carefully studied formulas on the page swimming together into meaningless symbols. Sweat beaded on my forehead as my stomach clenched with sharp stabbing pain. I raised my hand, trying to signal the proctor, but my coordination was failing. The other students looked at me with concern as I stumbled toward the door, bile rising in my throat. I barely made it to the bathroom before my body rebelled completely, retching on that cold tile floor, convulsing as months of preparation dissolved into nothing. The truth crystallized with brutal clarity. This wasn't nerves, this wasn't coincidence, someone had poisoned me. I didn't know it then, but my mother was already calling Lila with the good news. The exam proctor found me 20 minutes later, still shaking and barely conscious. They called an ambulance, but by the time I reached the hospital, it was too late. The exam was over. My blank answer sheet would seal my fate as a failure, a weak stomach on the biggest day of my life. My mother arrived at the hospital with perfect timing, tears in her eyes and concern in her voice. She held my hand while the doctors ran tests that would show nothing conclusive. The poison she'd chosen was smart, designed to incapacitate without leaving obvious traces. "These things happen, sweetheart," she whispered. "There will be other opportunities." But we both knew that was a lie. This exam was my one shot, my carefully planned escape route from their suffocating control. Without it, I'd be trapped in their world, dependent on their version of support, forever under their influence. Lila visited me that evening, her face a mask of sisterly concern. She brought flowers and spoke about how sorry she was that I'd gotten sick. Her performance was flawless, but I caught something in her eyes, a flicker of satisfaction she couldn't quite hide. "I'm sure you'll figure something out," she said, squeezing my hand. "The scholarship probably wouldn't have suited you anyway." 3 days later, I found her diary. I'd gone to her room looking for aspirin, still weak from whatever cocktail they'd fed me. The journal was hidden under her mattress, but grief and suspicion made me thorough. What I found inside shattered the last remnants of the family I'd thought I knew. The entry was dated the night before my exam. Mom's plan worked perfectly. Leo's little stomach problem cleared the path just like we hoped. The scholarship is mine now, and he'll never know we planned this from the beginning. God, you should have seen him retching on that bathroom floor. Pathetic. Finally, the golden boy gets what he deserves. Looking back, this was the moment I stopped being their victim and started becoming their nightmare. The betrayal wasn't just calculated, it was celebrated. They'd poisoned me, watched me suffer, and found joy in my destruction. The two people who should have protected me had conspired to eliminate me as competition for Lila's mediocre ambitions. I read the entry 17 times, memorizing every cruel word. Each sentence carved itself into my memory with surgical precision. They thought they'd broken me, left me weak and dependent. They had no idea they'd created something infinitely more dangerous. The scholarship announcement came 2 weeks later. Lila's name was called with great fanfare. She accepted the award with gracious humility, thanking her supportive family and dedicated teachers. The local newspaper ran a feature story about the bright young woman who'd overcome obstacles to achieve her dreams. I watched from the back of the auditorium as she basked in stolen glory. She wore the same satisfied smile she'd had in the hospital, the look of someone who'd won through calculated cruelty. The applause washed over her like validation of her methods. That night, I made a decision that would define everything that followed. Some betrayals demand forgiveness. Others demand justice. But what my family had done required something else entirely. Perfect, public psychological destruction that would expose their crimes while delivering the kind of humiliation they'd inflicted on me. They'd taught me that family loyalty was worthless when ambition called. Now I'd teach them what happened when you poisoned the wrong person. The game had changed, and they didn't even know they were playing. I started planning that very night, and I had all the time in the world. The transformation began the day after I found Lila's diary. While she celebrated her stolen victory, I disappeared into a different kind of education, not the books that had once consumed my life, but something far more dangerous: the systematic study of my family's weaknesses. I started with Lila's fears. Everyone has them, buried deep beneath the confident facades they wear in public. But siblings know each other's nightmares, and I'd grown up watching Lila's phobias develop with methodical precision. The porcelain dolls were the worst. She'd had panic attacks as a child whenever we visited antique shops. Something about their fixed smiles and dead glass eyes triggered a primal terror she couldn't control. Our grandmother's collection had sent her into screaming fits that lasted hours. I cataloged this information like a scientist documenting a specimen. Fear response triggered by oversized ceramic figures. Panic escalates with direct eye contact. Complete psychological breakdown occurs when escape routes are blocked. Looking back, I should have recognized how cold my thinking had become. The research consumed me for weeks. I studied sound engineering, learning how specific frequencies could induce discomfort and psychological distress. I memorized hydraulic, systems, and mechanical engineering principles. Theatrical special effects became my new obsession, each manual offering techniques for creating controlled chaos. My parents thought I was having a breakdown. They'd see me hunched over engineering textbooks until 3 a.m, sketching mechanical designs and calculating pressure systems. My mother would peek into my room, with fake concern, probably wondering if the poison had caused permanent damage. "Are you feeling all right, sweetheart?" she'd ask. "You seem so focused on these strange projects." I'd smile and tell her I was exploring new interests. She had no idea I was designing her daughter's psychological destruction with the same precision she'd applied to destroying my future. The warehouse became my laboratory, an abandoned building on the outskirts of town where I could test my creations, without interference. The first prototype was crude, a simple mechanical lift that raised a child-sized porcelain doll from a concealed compartment. But crude wasn't enough. This had to be perfect. I refined the design over months. Hydraulic systems that could lift dolls weighing hundreds of pounds with silent precision. Mechanical arms that could position them at exact angles for maximum psychological impact. Sound systems capable of producing the specific frequency of porcelain scraping against porcelain that would drive Lila into complete panic. Each component was tested and retested until it performed flawlessly. The dolls themselves came from antique shops and estate sales. I modified them, enlarging features and adding weight until they became towering monstrosities that would haunt anyone's nightmares. Jake found me in the warehouse on a Tuesday night in March. I was calibrating the sound system, adjusting the directional speakers to focus the audio torture with surgical precision. The mechanical dolls loomed around me like ceramic sentinels. "Leo, what the hell is this place?" I didn't know it then, but his horror should have been my warning to stop. He walked between the dolls, his face growing paler with each step. The largest one stood 8 feet tall, its porcelain face frozen in an eternal grin. Its glass eyes had been replaced with cameras that could track movement and adjust the doll's position for maximum psychological impact. "This is art," I said. "A performance piece designed to expose the truth about family loyalty." Jake turned to stare at me. "Leo, this isn't art. This is revenge. Psychotic, calculated revenge against your own sister." The word psychotic should have stung. Instead, it felt like recognition. Maybe that's what I'd become. Maybe that's what betrayal did to someone who'd trusted completely and been destroyed systematically. "She poisoned me," I said simply. "She celebrated my suffering. She stole my future and called me pathetic while I was convulsing on a bathroom floor. What would you call appropriate justice for that level of betrayal?" He couldn't answer. The morality was too complex, the betrayal too absolute. How do you respond proportionally to someone who destroys your life for personal gain? How do you forgive family members who plot your elimination like military strategists? I showed him Lila's diary entry, played the audio recordings I'd found on her phone. His expression shifted from horror to understanding, to something that might have been approval. The evidence was overwhelming. This wasn't sibling rivalry or misunderstanding. This was premeditated destruction of someone they claimed to love. "They did this to you," he whispered, "and now I'm going to return the favor with interest." The ceremony was still months away, but I already had the venue blueprints, the grand hall where Lila would accept her stolen scholarship, basking in applause that should have been mine. I'd studied every architectural detail, every access point, every technical system. Installing my revenge would require surgical precision. The foam pumps had to be positioned beneath the stage without detection. The mechanical doll systems needed concealed mounting points. The sound equipment required perfect acoustics to focus the psychological torture exactly where Lila would be standing. Looking back, the planning phase was when I truly understood the difference between justice and revenge. Justice would have been exposing their crimes through proper channels. Revenge was designing a public psychological breakdown so devastating that it would destroy not just Lila's reputation but her sanity. What I was building wasn't proportional response. It was total war. But proportional response assumes your enemies will show mercy. My family had demonstrated they were capable of poisoning someone they claimed to love. They deserved whatever destruction I could engineer. Jake left the warehouse that night without saying goodbye. I continued working on the dolls, perfecting their movements and expressions until they could terrorize someone with surgical precision. 6 months of betrayal had taught me that mercy was weakness, forgiveness was surrender, and some people deserved exactly the nightmare they tried to inflict on others. The ceremony was 3 weeks away and everything was ready. The venue installation took 3 nights of careful work. I entered through the service tunnels during the early morning hours when security was lightest. My engineering knowledge made me invisible among the technical crews preparing for the ceremony. Another contractor checking systems, nothing worth noticing. The foam pumps went in first, industrial-grade hydraulic systems concealed beneath removable stage panels. I'd calculated the exact pressure needed to create a thick, spreading pool that would look grotesque under the ceremonial lighting. The milk-white color wasn't accidental. It would remind everyone of the poison my mother had served me that morning. Next came the mechanical lift systems for the dolls. 8 mounting points positioned around the stage in perfect geometric precision, each one capable of raising a 400-pound porcelain nightmare with silent hydraulic power. The engineering was flawless, the execution invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly what to look for. The sound system required the most delicate work. Directional speakers disguised as standard audio equipment, positioned to focus the psychological torture exactly where Lila would be standing. I'd tested the frequency response dozens of times. The sound of porcelain scraping against porcelain, amplified and focused until it became weaponized audio. Looking back, I should have felt guilty about the precision with which I was engineering my sister's destruction. A janitor caught me on the second night emerging from beneath the stage with hydraulic fluid on my hands. My heart stopped for exactly 3 seconds before my new personality took control. "Art installation," I said smoothly. "Surprise element for the ceremony. Interactive performance piece about the fragility of achievement." He bought it completely. Why would a young man installing equipment be anything but legitimate? The lie came so easily I barely recognized myself. 6 months ago, deception would have been impossible. Now it felt like breathing. The dolls themselves were transported in pieces, assembled in the venue's storage areas during the final preparation day. Each one a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Oversized porcelain faces with modified features that exaggerated every element Lila feared. Glass eyes replaced with tracking cameras. Mechanical joints that allowed realistic movement. The largest doll stood 8 feet tall, its ceramic smile wide enough to show rows of painted teeth. Its arms could move independently, reaching toward targets with hydraulic precision. When activated, it would rise from beneath the stage like something emerging from hell itself. I tested each system individually, then ran complete sequences to ensure perfect coordination. The timing had to be flawless. Lila would walk onto the stage, accept her stolen scholarship, and then watch her world dissolve into the nightmare I'd engineered specifically for her. The evidence planting required surgical precision. The vial had to be positioned so it would fall naturally during the chaos. visible to cameras but appearing accidental. I'd chosen the exact type of container my mother had used to store the poison, down to the manufacturer and label design. The forged diary pages were my masterpiece of evidence fabrication, written in Lila's handwriting, revealing the premeditation behind my poisoning. Detailed enough to satisfy investigators, but subtle enough to seem genuinely discovered. I planted them in locations where security cameras would capture their recovery. I didn't know it then, but these planted clues would trigger a criminal investigation that would destroy my family more thoroughly than any public humiliation. The ceremony day arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, light wind, ideal conditions for outdoor camera equipment. Hundreds of guests filled the grand hall, including every dignitary and media representative in the city. Lila's moment of triumph would be broadcast live to thousands of viewers. I arrived early, dressed in standard technical crew clothing. My access credentials were perfect forgeries, my equipment indistinguishable from legitimate sound gear. I moved through the venue like I belonged there, making final adjustments to systems that would shortly deliver perfect revenge. Lila looked radiant as she prepared backstage. Her stolen scholarship had opened doors, created opportunities, validated the calculated cruelty she'd used to eliminate me as competition. She wore confidence like expensive perfume, completely unaware that her world was about to shatter. My mother sat in the front row, beaming with pride at her successful manipulation. She'd poisoned one child to advance another, and tonight she'd watch that strategy explode in her face with devastating public consequences. The ceremony began with speeches praising academic achievement and family support. University officials spoke about merit and dedication while I made final system checks. Everything was ready. 6 months of planning, weeks of installation, countless hours of psychological research, all leading to this moment. Looking back, I realized this was when I crossed the line from victim to something infinitely more dangerous. Lila took the stage to thunderous applause. She accepted her award with gracious humility, thanking her supportive family and dedicated teachers. The same family that had systematically destroyed my future for her benefit. The same teachers who had no idea they were celebrating academic fraud. I waited until she reached the podium center, exactly where the acoustic targeting was strongest. My finger hovered over the activation switch. 3 months of mechanical engineering, 2 months of psychological research, 6 months of cold planning, all focused on this single moment of perfect revenge. The switch clicked with satisfying finality. The lights shifted first, that sickly, green glow that made everyone's skin look diseased. Confused murmurs rippled through the audience as foam began bubbling up from beneath the stage. Thick, white, grotesque streams that spread like infection across the polished floor. Then the dolls began to rise. Lila's face went white as the first porcelain nightmare emerged from the floor. Her body froze as primal terror overrode rational thought. The phobia I'd cataloged and weaponized took control of her nervous system, with devastating precision. The sound hit exactly as designed. That soul-scraping shriek of ceramic against ceramic, focused through directional speakers until it became pure psychological torture. Lila didn't just scream. She shattered completely, just as I'd engineered her to do. The revenge was flawless, but the evidence planting would make it legendary. The investigation began within hours of Lila's breakdown. What started as concern for a scholarship winner's mental health quickly evolved into something far more sinister. When investigators found the evidence I'd carefully planted during the chaos, the vial rolled under a camera's direct view, exactly as I'd calculated. Distinctive blue glass with pharmaceutical residue that matched the compounds used to poison me 6 months earlier. The forensics team bagged it with the kind of reverence reserved for smoking guns. The diary pages surfaced during the venue cleanup, discovered by security personnel who immediately recognized their significance. Lila's handwriting detailing the premeditation behind my exam day poisoning, her celebration of my suffering, her cold calculation about clearing the path for her own success. Within 72 hours, the Golden Girl narrative collapsed completely. Looking back, I should have felt satisfaction watching their world burn. Instead, I felt only cold completion. The media explosion was immediate and devastating. Headlines screamed about academic fraud and family betrayal. The scholarship winner who'd built her success on poisoning her own brother. The mother who'd drugged her son to advance her daughter's ambitions. Local news became national coverage. The bizarre public breakdown had already gone viral, but now it had context. This wasn't just a mental health crisis. It was a confession delivered through psychological torture, orchestrated by someone who understood both his family's crimes and their deepest fears. The university moved swiftly to distance themselves from the scandal. Lila's scholarship was revoked within a week. Her enrollment was terminated. Every achievement she'd stolen from me dissolved like the foam that had surrounded her during the breakdown. The police interviews were thorough and devastating. Bank records revealed my mother's payments to ensure my exam failure. Medical consultations showed her researching drugs that would incapacitate without killing. Text messages between mother and daughter celebrated my destruction like a successful business venture. The audio recording I'd found on Lila's phone became the centerpiece of the criminal case. Her voice, crystal clear and utterly damning, describing how my stomach problem had cleared the path perfectly for her advancement. I didn't know it then, but this evidence would send both of them to prison for conspiracy and assault. The first arrest came on a Tuesday morning. I watched from my dorm window as police cars surrounded our family home. My mother emerged in handcuffs, her face a mask of shock and denial. The woman who'd served me poison with a smile was finally facing consequences for her calculated cruelty. Lila's arrest followed 3 days later. She'd been hiding at a friend's house, probably hoping the scandal would somehow blow over. The footage of her perp walk showed a completely different person from the confident scholarship winner. This was someone broken by public exposure of her crimes. The trial preparation revealed even more damaging evidence. Financial records showing systematic planning over months, medical consultations about temporary incapacitation drugs, communications between mother and daughter that read like a criminal conspiracy manual. My testimony was clinical and devastating. I spoke about the morning of my exam, the trust I'd placed in my family, the systematic destruction of my future for Lila's benefit. The jury watched my mother's face as I described drinking the poisoned milk she'd prepared. With such maternal warmth, the defense tried to paint me as an unstable genius seeking disproportionate revenge. They weren't wrong about the revenge part, but the evidence of their crimes was overwhelming. You can't claim self-defense when you're caught poisoning family members for personal advancement. Looking back, I realized the trial was when I finally understood the full scope of what I'd accomplished. The sentencing was swift and merciless. My mother received 3 years for conspiracy and assault. Lila got 2 years plus community service. Their reputations were incinerated beyond any possibility of recovery. The golden girl and her ambitious mother, exposed as calculating poisoners who'd destroyed their own family member for personal gain. But the real victory wasn't legal. It was watching them realize that their victim had become their nightmare. My mother visited me once after her release, 18 months later. She looked older, broken by prison and social isolation. The confident manipulator who'd served me poison was gone, replaced by someone desperately seeking forgiveness she'd never receive. "Leo, I never meant for things to go this far," she said. "I thought the drug would just make you slightly sick. I didn't know it would be so severe." I showed her the recording I'd found, the audio of Lila celebrating my stomach problem and calling me pathetic while I convulsed on that bathroom floor. Her face crumbled as she realized her innocent daughter had been the mastermind, not just a beneficiary. "She planned everything," my mother whispered. "I thought I was protecting her future. I didn't know she was using me." The betrayal ran deeper than even I had initially understood. Lila hadn't just benefited from my destruction. She'd orchestrated it, manipulating our mother into becoming her weapon against me. "You didn't go far enough," I told my mother. But I did. She left without another word. I never saw her again. The scholarships I earned through legitimate channels were more prestigious than anything Lila had stolen. MIT, Stanford, Harvard, all offering full rides based on merit rather than family destruction. My future rebuilt itself stronger than before, constructed on foundation of genuine achievement rather than calculated cruelty. A reporter called last week asking if I regretted destroying my family. The question was loaded with assumption about normal people, normal relationships, normal concepts of forgiveness and mercy. I looked at the old photo on my desk. My mother and sister from before I understood what they were capable of. Before I learned that family loyalty was worthless when ambition called. Before betrayal burned away everything soft and left only the essential core. The photo showed people I'd once loved completely, trusted absolutely, believed would protect me from the world's cruelty. But those people had never really existed. They were illusions I'd created to avoid seeing the calculated manipulators who shared my DNA. The real tragedy wasn't destroying my family. It was discovering I'd never had one to begin with. I miss who I thought they were.